What's up, Warriors fans? It's your main man, Max here, and after some of the stuff I just heard, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to Dub Nation. Now, I've talked about multiple players that the Warriors need to acquire now that we're deep into the offseason. The finals is ending in a few days, and the draft is only a few weeks away. So, the Warriors need to really start looking at what they need to do. I've talked about how they need to acquire Kevin Durant, bring him back into the fold because he is that perfect fit for the Warriors moving forward if they intend to go forward with the plan. Okay, we want to win a championship next year and the year after that, or at least one of those 2 years. Because the Warriors, going to this past playoff, they reminded me of that 16-17 Warriors team that swept every single team in the Western Conference before losing a single game against the Cavaliers. That's how tight a ship they were running. Unfortunately, when Steph went down, so did the boat. And that was just frustrating to watch. Unfortunately, because Giannis is no longer interested in leaving Milwaukee, the market's been reset for Kevin Durant. Now that the market's been reset, the price has gone way up, and it's probably too rich for the Warriors' blood unless things cool down for them. I've talked about the plan B options for the Warriors, which has been the likes of Lauri Markkanen and John Collins. However, with Lauri, he may cost too much since you're dealing with Danny Ainge, who likes to trade his all-star players for an arm, a leg, your firstborn son, 3 unprotected first-round draft picks, and 2 pick swaps. John Collins, another great idea, but we don't know how he fits with the Warriors moving forward, as he's another smaller center who can stretch the floor, but how is he going to match up with guys like Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis, the Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, the Jokers, as well as that Twin Tower lineup that the Thunder have moving forward with Hartenstein and Chet? And that's a questionable idea. However, the most questionable idea I've heard, and this is a really, 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 really bad idea, is the Warriors going after Trey Murphy III. Now, Trey Murphy, he's had a great season. And I appreciate that he really improved his game when Brandon Ingram left to go to the Raptors and Zion went down. But there's the big, big question mark we all have to ask ourselves. Are those numbers legit, or is he just another studio gangster? And we all know the studio gangsters. Let's be honest, they're putting up big numbers on a bad team. And with Ingram gone and Zion down, somebody had to score those points. Now, don't get me wrong, Murphy is a great 3-and-D player, but is he going to be the guy that puts the Warriors over the top? Yes, he did have a good shooting line. It was what was it? It was 21-5. Now, that's solid. I'm not going to lie. And again, that didn't lead to more wins for the Pelicans. They were still one of the worst teams in the NBA. And you ask yourselves, as a 3-and-D guy, is he going to fit within a motion offense, which the Warriors like to run? They like to have their guys do a lot of off-ball movement when they're moving the ball around. And Troy Murphy's really been a stagnant, sit on the corner, get that open 3, nail it, don't get me wrong, but that's it. He doesn't really create his own shot. He needs somebody else to set him up. And that's not exactly what the Warriors need right now. And it's frustrating to hear the rumor mill at least constantly circulate his name next to the Warriors. Now, he could be a great addition. He's young, he's on a longer term contract, but the fact is, his long term contract really constricts the Warriors too, because they might get pushed to the second apron, and then next thing you know, they can't make any other good additions for him. And on top of that, from what I've heard, his cost is going to be ridiculously high. And for me, that's not what's going to drive the Warriors to an NBA championship. Now, when we're talking about the cost, Joe Dumars has really emphasized that he wants a player that can help them in the playoffs. God knows if they make it. A guy who's a prospect that could potentially become a star, and then multiple first-round picks. And I look at that and I'm like, what's going on here? We both know that he has at least good numbers this past season, but that's not gonna translate into consistent numbers just yet. And you're asking for multiple first round picks in exchange for him, along with a young prospect that would beat Jonathan Kuminga, along with another, I guess, higher end playoff tested guy. And in that mind, it might even be Moses Moody or even Pods. I can't see it. Because the biggest red flag that I've seen with Trey Murphy III is the fact that he hasn't played more than 60 games except for once in his entire career. Now, I want you to think about that. He's played less than 60 games 3 times in his career, with him only playing more once. I can't speak to just the thought of trading for someone who doesn't work that often. When you're a championship contending team, you want this guy to be on your roster as often as he can. You want a guy who fits the culture, and a guy who's like, you know what, things may hurt, but I'm gonna play through it. And just from that number alone, he's not the kind of guy that's gonna fit with the Warriors. He's the kind of guy that just wants to collect his paycheck, which is pretty substantial, I might add, and then just continue to play and be set up by other players. He's not the guy who's going to turn into the star that the Warriors need should push come to shove. And when you look at the last 2 playoff runs, the Warriors don't need another 3-and-D type guy. They do need a shooter, do not get me wrong. Now that Clay's gone and Buddy Hield couldn't really fill that void that Clay left, and while the team does have Jimmy Butler to fill in the clutch role that Clay left, they still need that reliable 3-point shooter who can buy you a bucket, which is why I always argue the Warriors need Kevin Durant. And just the high cost for Trey Murphy, it makes me think that Kevin Durant's price maybe isn't as high as isn't that bad. It's like looking at two different pairs of shoes, Jordans and LeBrons. The LeBrons are maybe hot and expensive, but the Jordans are the classics, and you know what you're getting. You want to buy the Jordans. But with Trey Murphy, you're getting the LeBrons. And that's what's frustrating in terms of hearing these rumors. The high cost just does not match up with what the Warriors need. Now, when it comes right down to it, the bottom line is the Warriors should not go after a guy like Trey Murphy. He is what you call a luxury shooter. He is not a crunch time shooter. He's put up big numbers on a bad team, and when you're putting up big numbers on a bad team, you don't know if that's going to translate. We've seen it time and time again. All right, the biggest example is that I can think of off the top of my head actually is Michael Carter Williams. Now, we both remember Michael Carter Williams. He was Rookie of the Year 2013, put up great numbers. I believe it was 16, 6, and 5. And for a point guard, that's impressive. However, this was the process level Sixers. So the epitome of a bad team. And they had no prospects moving forward. So he was just the guy who had to score. And the situation is exactly the same with the Pelicans and Troy Murphy III. Brandon Ingram was gone. He was traded. Zion was injured. So somebody had to pick up the scoring slack, and that was Trey Murphy. He picked up the scoring slack, and now the Pelicans are trying to cash in. They're trying to sell high on his value and get the most they can in return. They're trying to, I guess, the best way to describe it is swindle another team, getting a ton of draft picks for a guy who likely won't average more than 10 points per game if he's on a playoff team. And just seeing that is the ultimate red flag. You don't want to deal with a team that's going to try and extort you for a player who had one good season. I looked at his other seasons too. He averaged 9, 10, and 14. Yes, that's a big jump from 14 to 21. But is it going to be replicated? Is he going to get those same minutes with the Warriors that he got with the Pelicans? And I'm not entirely sure he is. Because remember, he's a 3-and-D wing, which means he plays the small forward position. You know who else plays the small forward position? Jimmy Butler. Which is why the Warriors need to fill the voids that they need to fill first, like a big man to match up with some of the bigger players in the league, so they don't have a repeat of the disaster that was this Timberwolves series. And on top of that, he's not really a guy that fits the culture. Like I said, he's a guy that is a luxury, not a necessity. And if the Warriors intend on winning a championship within that 2-year time frame that they have left, they need to go after a big. They need to go after somebody who's battle tested, somebody who's not a studio gangster, somebody who's not a stat chaser, but a true winner. Or not winner, excuse me. But they need somebody like that. And if they're going to win that title, they need to look elsewhere and not talk to the Pelicans. And for Warriors Latest, I'm your main man, Max. And as always, go Dubs.